We have finally seen Benjamin's Nen, and Yahoo! Hello, and welcome back to SuccWarCentral. My name is CJ, and I sure have been saying this a lot lately, but I think this may have been my single favorite chapter of this arc so far. Apparently, Togashi heard what I said last week about how I was expecting a few more chapters of setup, and took it extremely fucking personally because he has decided to flip pretty much every possible acceleration switch in this arc to the on position during a chapter of what I can only describe as a masterclass in economic storytelling, setup, and payoff. People have been comparing martial law to the palace invasion from the Chimera Ant arc, but honestly, I do not think the palace invasion went from 0 to 100 this quickly. So, diving right into it, oh my goodness gracious, I love this first page. The glimmering buckshot, the incredible detail on this gun, Benjamin's expression of just blind, white hot rage as he just blows Psoriasis' shit smooth out his back. It's some absolutely gorgeous art, and you can tell by how amazing the drawings have been lately that Togashi's back surgery really has got him in much better shape. I'm not exactly sure what's being depicted in these shotgun shells. I imagine it's some kind of reflection, but I can't really tell of what. If anybody knows, let me know in the comments. I have to say though, the one thing that does ruin this page for me a little bit is that the way Salkov is positioned absolutely makes it look like he's gargling Benjamin's balls. I think this is hilarious, especially a couple of weeks after my boyfriend made this edit of Furykov, which he's been putting in my videos, which nobody noticed. Anyway, dear God, these panels are visceral. Like, I know it's an illusion, but Psoriasis' face here is horrifyingly visceral as his esophagus fills with blood and guts that have been shoved up there from the concussive force to his abdomen, and you can practically see him choking on his own organs, and just the way his eyes look so animalistic, and that mouth is just open in a pitch black pool of blood and guts, and ugh, it's so nasty, and I love it. Also, I choose to believe Benjamin kicked him in the nuts here just because he would totally do that. Anyway, this whole sequence solidifies that Benjamin's disgust for Psoriasis is in fact based on all the nasty stuff he's done. Benjamin may be evil, but he is lawful evil, and I kind of love that all this hating on Psoriasis is genuinely because the guy's a massive piece of shit, and not for some stupid political or sibling rivalry reason. It makes me appreciate Benjamin a lot more as a character. In fact, all of martial law has made me realize that what Hunter x Hunter has been really missing up till now is villains who genuinely believe they're the good guys. I mean, think about the other major antagonists. Pariston, the Phantom Troop, Genthru, Psoriasis, Camilla, Hisoka. They've all been kind of doing their evil deeds for the sake of mindless self-indulgence, but Benjamin is a man willing to live and die by his principles. It just so happens that in addition to respecting women, those principles happen to include monarchy, a caste system, and world domination. I also think it's really funny that Benjamin assumed Psoriasis had a counteractive ability and attacked him anyway because he wanted the smoke, but now just thinks his brother was an idiot. And furthermore, I love how he later describes Psoriasis' death as taking a shit for the first time in years, because this expression he makes looks exactly like that. So Salkov's trying to figure out what on earth is going on, and hey, he's actually starting to figure it out, sort of. The problem is the future part of Parallel Future. He can intuit the illusion part of it all just fine, but he has no way to figure out that Psoriasis can see the future. This is a problem because, well, it's my personal theory that Psoriasis is now going to follow Salkov, make sure he keeps to his word, and kill him the moment he blabs. And of course, if he sees the future, he can kill Salkov and anyone he tells before they've even done it, making this all for naught. So we go on, and Benjamin tells Salkov to testify exactly what he saw, and Salkov thinks, hey, that's the same thing as what Psoriasis said. My partner and I did a bit of a double take, and we went back to chapter 416, and well, the wording is a little different. So we have multiple theories about what this could mean. It's possible that Psoriasis has somehow found a way to see more than 10 seconds into the future, but this whole conflict had to last at least a minute. And even for someone as gifted as Psoriasis, I believe that such a drastic jump from an ephemeral 10 seconds to an ephemeral 2 minutes is a bit too much to believe when he spent days struggling to get his Zetsu timing under 1 second. Another idea is that Psoriasis is somehow able to modify this illusion and slightly alter Benjamin's words, but I really don't think it's that either. The man himself described the fake timeline as a parallel future, which sort of implies that he can't meddle in the original. What I think is most likely here is that Psoriasis either predicted Benjamin's behavior, or he and Benjamin have similar ways of speaking. See, Togashi has been drawing a lot of parallels between Unma's kids and showing us how they're all similar yet different in very interesting ways. That's going to get its own video at some point, and I think this is just one more example, so let's move on for now. I absolutely love Benjamin's monologue as he kills psoriasis. Knowing that he fully buys into all the doctrines of the Kakian Empire, his statement that he killed this man for its own sake and not as part of the succession contest, and is willing to let this summary execution be part of the official story, shows his absolute, unending hatred for this man and his conviction to purge him from his bloodline. He really said, yeah, I'll win in court, this guy's bad enough. Also, how come in these panels on page 4, Salkov and Benjamin look like two different stages of the same Pokemon evolutionary line? Anyway, Salkov talks about how he wants to check Theta's face to see if the wound has disappeared because only Nen users can see that wound, and it would confirm Psoriasis' death. And on the one hand, this is interesting. It suggests that this mark is likely some kind of emission or transmutation-based ability, as opposed to conjuration or manipulation, which could give us some hints about the Nen Beast's affinity overall. But on the other hand, oh my god, Salkov, you are a genuine idiot. Psoriasis literally told you he was going to create an illusion of his death that would last long enough. He asked you to secure the body, and you're still wondering if this is real or fake. You still want to check if he died. You absolute fool. You buffoon. This is a waste of time. And furthermore, this is an illusion of a future where the fourth prince is dead. So that mark will probably look like it's disappeared, but is in fact still there. Oh my god. I knew Salkov was a moron, but this is just so disappointing, especially after I spent all of last chapter hyping the dude up. He's so fucked. Anyway, it's not like he's gonna get the chance to check Theta's face, because he has been taken into custody and is being escorted to the Justice Bureau. And this really makes me wonder, where on earth is Theta? Benjamin's capturing all the Nen users and searching the quarters, but didn't find Theta. Last we heard, Psoriasis was going to take his time interrogating Theta. It might be possible he's already done that and something nasty has happened to her, but then again, I feel like Salkov would have some idea about this. He wouldn't just not feel this, right? I don't know, but I am quite worried about Theta. In any case, we continue to get some background on the circumstances that led to Chapter 410, and we see some more Royal Army soldiers. And in my understanding, while these guys are part of the army, they are not Benjamin's private army, and most of them probably aren't Nen users. However, this guy with the bushy beard, while once again, I think not being part of the private army, probably is a Nen user. He has the design of an important character, and it seems he understands how manipulation Nen works. So goddammit, once again we have a soldier affiliated with Benjamin whose name we don't know. 2 chapters after Togashi finally tied up all those loose ends for us, and I could finally rest in peace. It really pisses me off when we have important characters whose names I don't know. I really wish we just got one little blurb of narration, One Piece style, that just gives us his name. Like, come on, give us something. That's one of the few things, actually, that I criticize about Togashi's writing. I think it's crazy that Kaiser was such an important character for several chapters, and we didn't know his name for, like, years. That really annoyed me. Just one little narration box would fix this. In any case, they talk about the situation and their plans to issue an order for the arrest of Ridge in order to pressure the Hunter Association, and honestly, I think this is Benjamin's fatal mistake here. He talks about pressuring the association, but that is absolutely not a thing you want to do, well, ever. Benjamin seems to think that by pulling the entire Hunter Association into this fiasco, he can get them to cooperate and help him apprehend the missing princes. But they seriously outgun him and will not tolerate him attempting to jerk them around like this. The guy is talking mad shit about using the Hunter Association as a tool, like one hit from a Zodiac won't end his entire career. On the other hand, this might just go nowhere. The association is very individualistic, while Benjamin is assuming it acts like the Royal Army. If Benjamin says a hunter attacked us, it's most likely the association will just go, okay, and this has nothing to do with us. He's not a representative of our whole association. I mean, hunters kill each other all the time. Therefore, I don't expect anybody outside Loserus' camp to go to bat for Ridge. He might just get arrested, and that could be the last we hear of him. And yeah, we get confirmation that Koventoba was manipulated by Zhonglei's coin and warned him about martial law in advance so that he could escape. And surprise, surprise, Balsamilco has been recovered and is himself. So, To everyone in my comments section who insisted, despite all evidence to the contrary, that there was no way Haukenberg's arrow in chapter 413 could be deliberately intended to move Haukenberg's soul into someone else's body because he doesn't get to choose who swaps, you owe me $5. I told you he was in that arrow. Anyway, I'm actually quite happy about this. I was worried that we would never get to see Balsamilco's ability, but I think it's almost guaranteed now. Furthermore, once again, without knowing it, Haukenberg has made a really bad choice. As we have been made acutely aware, balsamilco vinegar is a truly essential ingredient required for this breadgemin to reach its most flavorful full potential. Balsamilco is Benjamin's right-hand man and an extremely necessary counterbalance to Benjamin's hyperimpulsivity and unwise urges. Benjamin needs Balsamilco's advice more than ever, and instead of taking him out, Haukenberg let him return to Benjamin unharmed. This means Benjamin is going to be at his best and sharpest for the rest of martial law, and Haukenberg has no way to be aware of just what an unfortunate decision that was. That said, I do want to see Balsamilco's face when Benjamin's like, oh, by the way, I expected a counteractive type net ability from Tserriednich, but I shot him in Zetsu anyway. Yeah, I know, maybe not smart, but I had to kill the guy. Oh, and also, I put out an arrest warrant for a member of the Hunter Association. Anyway, Balsamilco, where do we go from here? Balsamilco's gonna be like, oh my god, dude, what are you doing? Anyway, I love this page of Balsamilco and Koventoba just sitting there, disappointed and defeated looking. It's like they're on timeout for getting manipulated. Meanwhile, it does look like Tebepa and Tyson have been brought to room 1001 and were allowed to take a bunch of their soldiers with them, including Longhi, who you can recognize by her ponytail here. However, none of these silhouettes look like Izunavi or Giuliano to me, even though we saw them being escorted with Tyson last time she appeared. And there's this one panel later where it looks like it might be Giuliano behind Tyson, but I'm not sure. So, yeah. And we still haven't seen Izunavi. So I really have to wonder where exactly Izunavi and or Giuliano have gone off to, considering that they're the two people who I could really see making a difference if shit goes properly pear-shaped. However, with the incoming context, I no longer think we're going to be in for that kind of fight. So moving on to this discussion between Benjamin, Tebepa, and Tyson, this panel of the 5th and 6th princes is absolutely frying me, as I'm sure Togashi intended. And I really like this whole scene because against all odds, it genuinely seems like these three have a sibling dynamic, warped and twisted as it is. And after having them isolated for so long, I also really enjoy a bunch of princes being in the same room and just interacting. So Benjamin goes over the cover story for martial law, and oh my god, I love this morbid little joke Tyson makes. What's the matter, Royal Army? It's called dark humor. So Benjamin actually makes it seem like he's considering calling off the succession contest, and his words here tacitly imply that he aims for a peaceful solution and only wants to kill the princes that refuse to reach a peaceful resolution. And boom, TSK-17 jump scare. Here we come to the true genius of Benjamin's plan, and I have to say I am extremely impressed with what he's managed to come up with. It's brilliant because unless you guess his guardian spirit beast's ability, which could straight up be anything, it doesn't make any goddamn sense. That's why they're never gonna see it coming. Everyone's ready for Benjamin to start blasting fools, waiting for the minute he pulls the trigger to play all their cards, hit their last minute panic buttons, bust out any net abilities they have up their sleeves, because that's exactly what they'd expect him to do, and it's exactly why he's not doing that. This man screams pure brute force, but is instead dispatching his enemies with a biological weapon he's already been infected with. Like I said, it's completely unreasonable without that missing piece of the puzzle. That's why he's able to catch all the other princes off guard, and my god, it makes me think he might actually get some results. He's not gonna win, but he might get some results. We're gonna talk more about that later though. And look at this. Tebepa is convinced that Benjamin is about to make a move. She demands to come along for the inspections of their quarters, but she doesn't get that he's already made that move. That's the crux of it. Benjamin is going to keep his siblings occupied, trying to stop his future plans, not realizing that he's already defeated them. Also, I think it's interesting that Tyson has some respect for Benjamin, and I really don't think she's lying here because the girl wears her heart on her sleeve. It makes me really sad knowing that he's just poisoned her. Man, this whole scene is kind of brutal. Tebepa is of course convinced that Benjamin just wants to replace the monarchy with military rule and intends to be the dictator regardless, but girl, you're thinking too long term. This is happening today, and you're thinking 2 months from now. After this, we get what is by far my favorite section of the chapter. Benjamin has completely secured Tier 3, and this exchange with his soldiers is amazing. He knows they're no longer at risk, and the way he informs them that he's dying and frames being targeted by enemy abilities and biological weapons as having done their duty as soldiers. God, man, it's kind of touching. And in particular, I love this panel of him with the curse. Also, this explains why Botabai said Benjamin didn't look well in chapter 410. I don't think he has some kind of super senses that can detect TSK-17. He was probably just using Gyo and saw the Nen curse. And despite it all, Benjamin says, exhilarating, isn't it? It's a moment that really reminds me of Psoriasis's excitement at his Nen ability and Melody's music. For all Benjamin hates the guy, like I keep saying, Togashi continually reinforces how similar Unma's children really are to each other. So while Benjamin's giving the hardest speech of all time, we can see something very interesting behind him. That something being Chiamashi, and he is no longer touching Yushohi, and probably didn't as soon as he and Yushohi entered room 1009 and saw that it was just an unconscious Balsamilco. So Yushohi's most likely in Zetsu for at least an hour or two. But after that, Chiamashi will likely meet back up with him and resume using his pseudo-coercive manipulation ability and restore that unbeatable protection. Speaking of unbeatable protection, that's exactly what you can have for your web browser with the sponsor of today's video, IckshonpeVPN. Surfing the web, you're exposed to all sorts of risks: data breaches, hacking attacks, and pseudo-coercive Nen abilities. There's hundreds of VPNs out there competing for your money, but only one was programmed by a single-star hacker hunter, that being my esteemed colleague, IckshonpeKatocha. God, sorry, Mr. Katocha, I hope I said your name right. Mr. Katocha has an incredible track record, including designing the cybersecurity for the legendary game Greed Island. And if anyone's tried to use an emulator on that game or go there in person, you know how tight his security is. So what are you waiting for? Download IckshonpeVPN today, with plans starting as low as 390 Jenny per month. And that's not all. Use code SuccWarCentral to get 10% off, or use the code on a valid hunter's license to get 40% off. Once again, thank you to my friend and colleague Ixhomp for sponsoring this video, and now it's time for your regularly scheduled content to resume. So, Balsamilco is going after Halkenberg and mentions that Halkenberg's followers can be tracked by the feather pinion on the backs of their hands. This is interesting because it implies that Halkenberg's guardian spirit beast is still, I don't know, is alive the right word? Let's say active, despite his body swaps. This suggests to me that the guardian spirit beast is linked to the prince's soul, not their body. In other words, we could have some truly bizarre shenanigans if Halkenberg possesses a prince and their soul swaps to another body, as their guardian spirit beast might actually follow them. Now, if anyone else were going after Halkenberg, I'd mock their confidence and wish them a sarcastic good luck. But Balsamilco is a decently smart guy, and he's been gotten by Halkenberg before, so he knows what he's up against. He clearly has a plan for his rematch, and for now, I say let him cook. God, I really do think letting Balsamilco live was a massive mistake by Halkenberg, because it gave Benjamin so much crucial information that Mr. Berg really did not have to divulge. So, they're closing in on Zhongle and Lucerus, and have apprehended the heads of the Cha-R and Ji-Yu mafia families. Well, this makes me incredibly nervous, because you have to remember that at the end of the day, Onyor is the guy that Henry answers to. In other words, Henry may be obligated to somehow get involved with the martial law fiasco, and he cannot afford any additional distractions right now. Henry is very important when it comes to keeping the Heili in check, and if he's suddenly got way bigger priorities, well, that's just one more thing no longer holding Morena's incredibly destructive faction back. One more person who understands the threat they pose, whose attention has been turned elsewhere. Oh, and it gets worse, because Kenny Wang is a traitor in the Cha-R family. He's the underboss. The boss has been arrested, Rocco Lee is gone, so Kenny Wang is now in charge, and there's no one to stop him from enacting whatever Morena's agenda is for the Cha-R family. That is a huge problem. Now, I'm going to go a bit out of order here when it comes to talking about the rest of the chapter. Benjamin discusses his thoughts on the other princes before his Nen Beast and his plan are revealed, but I'd rather do the reverse, and you guys shouldn't care. You've read the chapter anyway. So, Benjamin's Nen Beast is called Life of the Wanderer, which is a song, Bohemian Rhapsody, which is also a song, And it's two musical references in one, and I do love that, and I think it's very interesting now that all of Unma's children have been in some way associated with music. Hockenberg's Grimmahl les Dissonances is named after an orchestral piece, Benjamin's Nenbeast I've just discussed, and Tserriednich is a music connoisseur, is shown playing music while he tortures women and is obsessed with Melody's Nen ability and really wants to meet her. Anyway, let's talk about the beast itself. As most of us were speculating, it attaches to other people and becomes their guardian spirit beast after Benjamin dies and merges with it. And furthermore, it fuses with Benjamin's Nen. So this thing is going to be a true monstrosity, having access to Benjamin Baton and all the abilities it's collected and will continue to collect. Also, I speculated that Benjamin possessing his beast would let him retain the qualification for the Succession War a la Hockenberg, but it seems I was wrong, and this is actually more of a Cacho situation where he is in fact out of the running. So, all standard stuff we could have guessed, but what I'm really interested in is this specification of how the next host is chosen. See, I have some theories about how this is going to be used for some incredible characterization by Togashi. By God, do I have theories. The narrator specifies that Benjamin and his Nen Beast take turns choosing the next host. And since we think these Nen Beasts reflect the prince's subconscious, it's going to strike an interesting contrast between what Benjamin thinks he wants and how he truly feels on an internal, discrete, below the surface level. Hear me out. I believe this Nen Beast is going to end up possessing psoriasis. I mean, these last few chapters have really hammered home just how much Benjamin utterly despises this man. But Togashi has also been highlighting all sorts of ways in which they're more similar than they'd like to admit. I want you to take a moment just to imagine how emotionally devastating it would be to Benjamin when his subconscious chooses psoriasis as his next host. He would have to confront all sorts of hideous truths about himself and the Kaken Empire he's devoted his life to. On the other hand, this could also be what does psoriasis in. It really seems like Benjamin is going to retain some autonomy as the future Nen Beast, and having a Nen Beast attached to you that hates you and wants you to die is pretty scary. In the best case scenario for psoriasis, it could bite him in the ass at a crucial moment, and in the worst, this Nen Beast might actively try to kill him constantly and force him to remain in Zetsu, lest it tear him apart. This has all sorts of potential for an ironic punishment to psoriasis. He loves his new ability, and well, now he can't turn it off or he'll die. But still, it could also bounce to someone else. Tyson, to Beppa, who knows? I know the plan is to send it to the illegitimate Chud, but I don't see that plan succeeding in the slightest. Oh my god, that gives me an even more sinister idea. Imagine Benjamin successfully sends the beast to his child, only for psoriasis to kill the baby, and now the Nen Beast is on him. It would be a truly sickening act of depravity that makes the audience properly hate psoriasis, because so far, he hasn't hurt anyone we care about. To be a convincing villain, I feel, our hatred for him has to be personal, and this would certainly be a way to do it. Okay, let's go through Benjamin's thoughts on all the other princes, and my thoughts on those thoughts. So he's watching Camilla through secret window, and she's panicking and searching for medical help. And like, those memes about Camilla being the one to pull Leorio back into the main plot are suddenly not looking quite as far-fetched as they were, but I still think she's dead. She's super dead. And again, I know it's fake, but god, this panel of psoriasis with a boot print on his face is so cool looking. I'm jealous of Benjamin, because I wanted to be the one to stomp on psoriasis, blow his back out, and rearrange his guts, you know? Anyway, I am terrified of what psoriasis could be up to. He could be doing anything. I don't think he's like killed Benjamin or anything, because first of all, that would be not great for the story. Second of all, it logistically just probably wouldn't work with the whole he has to remain in Zetsu thing. Does he have to remain in Zetsu the whole time? Not sure. Either way, Benjamin has some seriously formidable 10. I don't see it working. And third of all, it would actually benefit psoriasis a lot more to let Benjamin do his thing in martial law and then just wait till all that's done. Anyway, psoriasis could be going anywhere. What if he's following Salkov and is going to slit his throat the moment he tries to share his secrets like I speculated? Or, even worse, what if he goes after Melody? Imagine the parallel future illusion ends, and suddenly, Melody is face to face with the fourth prince, has no idea how he got there, and no idea what to do. But worst of all, what if he just goes around collecting information and somehow observes Benjamin using TSK-17 and takes some for himself? God, I feel like Theta right now. This is a man who absolutely should not have access to TSK-17. If you think psoriasis with Nen is bad, psoriasis with TSK-17 is gonna be even worse. Also, I just want to point out that Benjamin's extreme hatred for psoriasis is what is going to do the former in. TSK-17 would be the perfect counter to psoriasis' ability, and if you were just willing to apprehend him and take him to room 1001 to dose him with TSK-17, he could have actually killed him. But instead, he was so insistent on brutally and personally killing his brother that he didn't even do that. On the other hand, he said he expected a counter-type Nen ability. How ironic would it be if the first thing he did was use TSK-17 just in case it was a Camilla situation? And Psorias won't know till he starts feeling symptoms. Anyway, moving on. Tebeppa and Tyson are infected, but guys, I think they might tank the virus. The symptoms appear well before things get bad, and with everyone being corralled into room 1001, the chances of Tebeppa's Nen Beast activating and forming a cure to TSK-17 just go further and further up. Even if Kurapika doesn't show up, theoretically as long as Tebeppa can form a treaty with another prince, she can activate her Nen Beast. And I assumed this wasn't going to happen before because, I figured Benjamin was just going to blow her shit smooth off, but it looks like he's just not going to do that. He's not going to shoot her himself because he's already killed her. And honestly, I think the person Tebeppa ends up forming a partnership with might be Tyson. These two were infected at the same time and will probably experience symptoms at the same time. Also, I want you to picture this. Tebeppa agrees to working with Tyson in exchange for reading her book. It would be really funny. Then again, guardian spirit beasts can't attack people with said beasts. Does this mean Tebeppa could only sign the agreement with a prince's guard and not a prince themselves? Regardless, I think Togashi enjoys Tyson and Tebeppa as a comedy duo enough that he might actually make them an unlikely pair of collaborators. I also really appreciate that Benjamin finds admirable qualities in them. It shows a soft side, because while I can see it with Tebeppa, I would have expected Benjamin to view Tyson as frivolous and a disgrace. God, how sad is it that Benjamin loves Tyson more than Tyson's own mother? Moving on, we have this panel of Fugetsu, and God, it's horrifying. And guess what, guys? We have a bingo board update. Yup, I cried at this panel. I don't fully know why, to be honest. When Benjamin was talking about Fugetsu, and gets to the part where he says, "May you be born into an ordinary family in your next life," for some reason, I just started crying with, no warning. I don't know. I can't explain it. I think maybe it's because it shows that Benjamin recognizes the injustice and unfairness of what he's doing, but is going through with it anyway. It's moments like these where you can see that this guy has what it takes to be a good person. He was almost there, but just isn't. I view him as a sort of older Halkenberg, further along his path to corruption, and seeing how he cares about Fugetsu really just tugs at my heartstrings, I guess. I don't know. But fair is fair. I cried, and I told you guys I cry really fucking easily. This is practically a free space. Anyway, Benjamin's thoughts about Oito and Wobo really reinforce this idea. Benjamin has a sweet and compassionate thought about how he's going to allow Oito and Wobo to escape if they don't possess the qualifications for the contest, but immediately turns it on its head, thinking about how he'll murder Oito, her sister, both babies, and all their families as punishment if it turns out Wobo is really on board. And right before you come at me with these trolley problem excuses, the kinds Halkenberg is using to justify all his violence, the kind Nasabi used, I want to remind you, Benjamin says he will kill them all, regardless of whether or not Wobo has her succession rights, just because he's pissed about being deceived in this hypothetical scenario. It's not even about the succession war at that point. It's just a truly evil act of retribution to remind you that Benjamin was almost a good person, but by God, that ship has sailed long ago, and this man cannot be anything other than a villain. Luckily, I don't think that situation will come to pass, because due to the Gon and Killua plotline, I strongly believe that the real Wobo is on the mainland, as Oito believes. And then, of course, we get this panel of what appear to be the 4 princes Benjamin considers at large. And hey, I kinda got him right. 3 out of 4 isn't bad, but I misjudged how Benjamin would treat the Wobo situation. Still, it's really nice to have our answer. I mean, I must have tried to puzzle out who these 4 princes were in 5 different videos, so it just feels good not to have to do that anymore. And then, last but not least, Benjamin is going after Unma. God damn, he's really gonna do it. I have to wonder if Beyond is going to let this happen, because honestly, I don't think he needs Unma at this point. In fact, I could easily see him backstabbing her when all he needs is Haukenberg for whatever plan he has in mind. Unma's just an extra witness. Assuming, of course, Unma wasn't bluffing Dafirikov and is in fact working with Beyond. Still, before that, Benjamin has to go to the Justice Bureau, and I think we're just about caught up to where chapter 410 started. Oh my goodness gracious, I do think that a handful of princes are going to survive martial law, but with Togashi stepping on the gas like never before, I might be entirely wrong. There's a legitimate possibility that martial law ends with only two princes alive, Wobble on the mainland, and 4th Prince Tserriednich, armed with an overwhelming Nen ability, no competition, and 3 monstrous Nen beasts. Regardless, I have a feeling this break week is going to feel longer than the entire hiatus between chapters 410 and 411 did. I can't wait for our next chapter. I hope you'll join me then, and I hope you have a wonderful day.